Hey everybody, and welcome back to my podcast, to my vlog. This new semester of lessons, we're going to be studying some lessons of Jesus. Go figure, right? We're going to be basing this series off of a lecture series by R.C. Sproul. He's a pretty smart guy, and so I figured it would be a pretty smart thing for us to do that. When we're going to be looking specifically Jesus' teaching, because he was a pretty smart guy. I don't know if you know that about him as well. And he had some pretty unique teaching styles, and he was really good at it. And specifically, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is the way that he spoke through parables. Because while Jesus wasn't the only one that taught with parables, he did that a lot. We see that a lot in his lessons in his earthly ministry. We do see parables elsewhere in history, right? Pharisees taught with parables as well. We saw there are a few in the Old Testament. We know the most famous one is probably when Nathan the prophet speaks to David after his sin with Bathsheba. Don't be like David in that way. Don't do it. But the way that Jesus used parables was so profound, and I think it'd be really, really good of us if we would take a minute and just focus on his teachings this way. And so as we look into his lessons, we want to be doing a few things. One, we need to realize that parables, literally even the word, was meaning to go alongside a lesson. It wasn't a standalone thing. It was something that goes alongside para, meaning to partner with, and bull, to be thrown, or however you pronounce that Greek word. It's something that was thrown alongside of other teaching. It wasn't a standalone thing. So it's important that we're understanding our context as we're studying this, but also knowing too that Jesus often uses parables to speak about the kingdom of heaven. And so as we do that, as we study these parables, we're going to be seeing a few different things. We're going to see how it reflects his main trajectory for his earthly ministry, for his kingdom ministry, and we're going to be seeing how it's meant to impact the way that we live. And for our first set of parables, that's right, we're doing 2 today, we're looking at one that does, in fact, focus on kingdom ministry. On the kingdom of heaven, rather. And for that, we're going to be going to Matthew. Let me get to the Bible. We're going to be taking a look at Matthew, the book of Matthew, chapter 13. Like I said, it's 2 parables, so it's verses 44 is the first parable, and then the second parable is 45 through 46. Let's take a look. It says this: "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. And then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. And again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it." So as we hear this parable, it's important too to remember, while it might sound like a super basic thing, a teacher wouldn't teach us something that we already know, or that they're aware that we already know, right? So we need to realize too that Jesus is doing the same thing. Of course, he knows that this is a lesson, at least that his original audience needed to hear. And I think that it's safe to assume we need to hear this one as well, right? So as I said already, this parable is about the kingdom of heaven. That's pretty obvious because it says the kingdom of heaven is like, right? So there's no really trying to figure that one out. So it's interesting as we see these 2 lessons then that talk about these men giving up all they have. They're giving up all their lives to buy this specific thing. And this thing that they're seeking to buy is the kingdom of God, right? It is an analogy. It is comparable to eternity in heaven. That's the moral of the story, right? That is worth giving up everything that we have. However, the reason that God is teaching us this lesson is because that's not common. That's not our gut reaction to do that. And I think what's important here too is that we're looking not at what's literally happening, right? Because Jesus puts it in our terms. He puts a monetary value, which is kind of hard to do, on eternity in heaven. Except that he doesn't actually tell us, oh, this first guy, his net worth was 1 million. The second guy was, the second guy's Jeff Bezos, right? So that's kind of a big deal. They're giving up everything that they have. It doesn't matter how much that actually is worth monetarily speaking. It is literally everything they have. And so they're doing that because they understand the value of heaven. And that's the lesson here that Jesus is sending across here, is that the value behind the kingdom of God is priceless. It is worth everything that we can even imagine, everything that we can accumulate on earth. It is worth giving up for that. Right? This first guy just stumbles across this treasure in a field, and he's like, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to cover this up, and I'm going to go buy this. Because it is better for me to have this treasure buried in a field than it is to have everything back in my old life. Right? And this other guy, this merchant, probably has lots of pearls. Probably has some pretty nice pearls and other gems. I don't know, maybe he's got some nice rock collection. But he says, this pearl is worth not having anything else. I would rather have this single pearl than all of the things that I have back home and all of the things that I could accumulate from my old life, right? He says that it is worth giving up for that. And so, as we understand this, we see too the value system that Jesus has set on the kingdom of heaven, on the value that Jesus has set on eternity with God. And he's not just telling us this because he wants us to know what's important to him. He's telling us this because we should be doing this too. He's telling us what his value is on this, how much worth he puts on this, because he knows that it's true for us as well. He knows that it is worth us giving up everything in this life. He knows that the value system that he has set in place is what's best, because he's God. He knows everything. The question is, do you agree? Do you think that everything in your life is worthless in comparison to eternity with God? What if you were told that something that you had was keeping you back? Would you give it up? Or how about this? Are you seeking to align your values with what Jesus aligned his with? And I don't just mean a little bit. I mean entirely. That's what Jesus is talking about in these 3 verses. Is that true for you? Let's talk about that.